Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio, the podcast for serious martial artists, self-defense practitioners, and of course, ninjutsu students. So, let's see, what are we doing this week? We're going to do a little shift, right? For a couple of weeks here, we've been discussing the Shinden side of things, KUDEN, Shinden, inner workings and whatnot. So we're gonna switch, and we're gonna be taking a look at personal combat. Right? We're going to be taking a look at specifically something that, several things that I covered during this past weekend at our annual spring ninja camp. And so, so a bunch of things, right? A lot of this stuff is invisible, but the answer to the question, right? How do I know what technique? How do I know which skill when in a fight or in an attack situation? Because one of the things that was noted way back in the day, I mean, I got started in this martial art in 1980, right? And one of the things that Hatsumi Sensei pointed out, other teachers pointed out, was the ninja always has the right technique at the right time. Really? How the hell does that happen? Well, we're going to take a look at that and more as soon as we get this ball rolling.
Question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world.
All right. Was it only on my end, or did we have a sound glitch again? Could you hear it? James, are you there? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. All right. Did we have a sound glitch? No sound? Son of a bitch. Anyway. Okay. So, all right. Anyway, we're coming fresh out of our annual spring ninjutsu training camp. And so this time we had a good group of folks. Not that we don't always have a good group, but I mean, we had a much larger group. I think folks are finally starting to reach out and go to training events and things like that, and not just decide that they're gonna be couch ninja or whatever. So had a really, really great time. Although I think we had more than our fair share of people who earned the nickname that I often give people on Sunday, which is kind of a play on words, right? Their martial name yesterday was Dragon Ass, right? And that's, take that any way you want, right? So, but thank you to everybody that came in. Thanks to my guest instructors for helping out. It was an awesome event. Let's do this. Let's start back before even the question, right? How do I always know what technique, right? When I first got started, again, 1980, give or take. Yeah, it was 80, late 80, early 81. The way ninjutsu was being presented, right, and this ninja idea was that a ninja always has the right technique at the right time against whatever attacker he or she is dealing with. Well, how the hell do you do that? Right? That's our main theme, but let's back up before that, okay? Because when we talk about techniques, we talk about a little bit less when we talk about skills. When we talk about technique, people think Kata, they think these prearranged models and whatnot. And so you have folks that, folks that definitely want to buy into them, which is fine, right? They're absolutely useful, right? But then you have a whole bunch of people who have been in altercations and whatnot, and they're like, you're not going to use a Kata in a fight. Right, you're not going to fight that way. Nobody fights that way. They don't work. Whatever. Okay, and there's lots of things behind it: personality types, agenda. As a matter of fact, I just made up a list of some educational emails I'm going to be sending out, and one of them is why Bushido thugs need ninjutsu to be fake. Okay, a lot of these guys who say things don't work or whatever, right? They need for that to be true. Right, and there's a whole story, mid 80s, late 80s. Again, we'll talk about that some other time. Where it was a congressional subcommittee here in the United States that convened, right? Sensei Stephen Hayes, regardless of what you think of him, he almost single-handedly saved ninjutsu from becoming outlawed here in the United States. And most people have no idea. Okay, I have a transcript. Well, it's not a transcript of the whole hearing, but the outline of what he covered. Okay, but let's just say, suffice it to say that a bunch of other martial artists or people that were teaching other martial arts felt threatened by the number of people that were migrating toward ninjutsu, and literally called their congressmen and senators, telling them that we were going to overthrow the government. And the United States government literally had a subcommittee put together to determine whether or not this should be outlawed in the United States. Okay, so and there's that, right? That's shit that happens right in the background, and people talk smack. Anyway, so but let's go back behind this thing, right? What's the answer? Because even Joe Rogan, right? For those of you who know Joe Rogan, right? On his podcast, right? Joe Rogan's a fighter, he's a comedian, he has a podcast, all that, right? Really strong guy. But even his take on things is, you can't use kata in the fight or in a fight, right? And I guess it depends on what it is that you're talking about, right? Are you sticking to, like, you're going to do this step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of thing, as is? You're going to do seon, you're going to do shiaku, you're going to do koku, whatever, on the street as it is, not without getting the other guy to throw exactly what you want or need to make that happen. Okay. Now, again, during this past weekend, we took a look at some things that are really required, right, to make this kind of stuff work, right, and to really, I almost used a $50 word out of a $5 mouth. I almost used the word extrapolate, right, to pull out, right, the lessons that are hidden in the kata, right. But we're going to set aside the idea that you're going to do this thing step by step by step. Now, does that mean that it won't come out that way? No, but that's not the plan, right? The word kata itself means what? Right? I can hear everybody yelling form. It means form, sensei. It means form. Yeah, okay. One definition, right? If you follow me on my whiteboard Wednesdays, right, I'll write out a kanji, and we're talking about this concept. And sometimes it's something that everybody knows. Other times it's something like this last time I covered something called tachiai and whatever, right? And so one of the first things I do is break down the kanji, and we look into all the meanings that this thing could have, or enough, right? So that we're not trapped by some easy definition, right? Which, sorry, lazy students are prone to. Okay, I know this because I almost got caught up in it when I was learning Japanese. Okay, not the martial arts so much, because I grew up in a very violent life growing up, outside the home, inside the home. Right, so I had a very, very specific perspective on why I was doing martial arts, self-defense, those kind of things, and it was not to be the top guy, not to be the winner, not to be a black belt, anything like that. Those kind of goals, as far as black belt and whatnot, came later. But again, that was always as a measuring device. It was never as an ego stroker or whatever. Right? And it was, again, just because of that background of violence. But when I was starting to learn Japanese, okay, and I'll tell this story, and you can see maybe where people might have the tendency to do this in martial arts or other things. Okay. So I was learning, and I found that there were these alternate translations, but also the place where I started, I didn't find out until years later that was not a good source. It's not that you can't learn the language, but it's like a really low politeness level, right? It's like, one of my Japanese mentors or tutors said that was akin to like sailor talk or soldier talk, right? Really low end kind of stuff, right? What I found was with these multiple pronunciations, and because of the poor quality of the program or the source I was trying to learn from, they were just listed, right? You could say this, or you could say this, or you could say this. And so what I did was I gravitated toward the thing that was easiest, right? And I'll give you an example. One of those things was how to say please in Japanese, okay? Now I'm going to give you two, but there are way more ways to say please in Japanese, just like there are way more ways to say thank you, excuse me, pardon me, those kind of things, because they're all contextually based, right? But we're just going to use please, right? So open this thing up, okay? And by the way, it was a Berlitz course, right? And I'm sure lots of people have learned languages from Berlitz, but it was just overly simplistic, right? And it did not serve me. But either way, right? So but next to the English word please, right, there are these two Japanese options, right? One, onegaishimasu, right? Onegaishimasu, right? And the other one was dozo, okay? Dozo. Well, guess where my ego gravitated to? Because at first, looking at this thing, onegai, whatever, right? Dozo, shit, I choose dozo, right? Just like next lesson, okay? And then I go to use dozo in context with a native Japanese person, and they kind of winced a little bit, and they looked confused. And then, they it's like it broke through, and they were, oh, okay, right? Like they knew what I was trying to say, but I was treated like an infant, right? Or like a toddler. They're learning a language, but they don't always get the words right. And I don't mean pronunciation. I mean wrong word for the moment. And then parents have to fix it and things like that, right? So the Japanese will tolerate people with like crappy pronunciation and things like that because they know what you're trying to say, but they would never say it that way, right? So anyway, I gravitated toward this thing, right? This shorter word, easier to say, whatever, right? And it wasn't until later when I realized that I needed a different source for learning that both of them do indeed mean please, but they don't mean please the same way, right? So dozo is please accept this, please take this, right? I'm handing someone a gift. I'm handing someone something and I say dozo, right? Please take this. Please accept this. Right? Onegaishimasu is I'm asking for something. I'm asking for the wrench on the the workbench, or I'm asking for assistance, like in the dojo, or whatever. Okay. Most of you know onegaishimasu because you know the bowing in and bowing out procedures or ritual through the dojo, right? So at the beginning of class, right, we do the whole Shikinari Mistai Komyo. We used to say Ninpoi Kan. There's been several iterations of this. Most people don't know that because, again, ego grabs onto whatever was going on when they got started. And then there's a backdating assumption, right? This is the way it's always been, and it's the right way, right? And, some old timer comes in behind him and says, hey, it wasn't always done that way. It was done this way. Well, that's weird. No. The fact that you're crystallizing one way of looking at things and ignoring history while saying you want to do things the traditional way or you only do things historically, then that's weird. Okay. So, but anyway, so there's this difference, right? So we can't just pick and choose. Okay. But I believe that when the folks who gravitate toward kata, right, what they're trying to do is memorize this thing, and it's the hope and a prayer kind of thing that I can just do this thing and I can whip it on somebody. No. And again, here's where the story started, right? The word kata, okay? The word kata does indeed mean form, but it also means model, example, scenario, situation, right? It's very contextual, right? Here is an example of principles and concepts put together in a way that is a potential for handling this kind of an attack. Well, shit. I want to know I've had students that, I would teach a technique a certain way. Somebody else would teach it a different way or whatever. And this person, they made it to black belt in spite of themselves, but they wanted to know what is the right way. There can only be one right way. So what is that? Okay, well, here's the model that we introduce everybody to, but you're above that level, so you should be able to do variations of it, but still be doing the same thing to it. Okay? If that's not possible, then you've learned a bunch of things, but you haven't grown. And it's me talking to him, not you, right? Because again, we're all enlightened. Anyway, so we have to be careful with these things, right? Yes, you're going to use a kata, right? You're going to use an example of what you've learned in an actual situation. You're going to string basics together, fundamentals, kihon, and kihon no kihon, right? Fundamentals of the fundamentals. You're going to string these things together in a logical way that matches his attack to resolve the situation, right? Okay. But that's what a kata is. A kata is a string of waza. It's a string of actions. It's principles and concepts in motion. It's a stringing together of kihon no kihon, in a certain way to show a potential outcome. Okay. For those of you who train with me and you're in the inner circle, one of the first things you got from me was a worksheet that was your taijutsu progression chart, right? It has 3 levels leading toward mastery, right? So in the first level, it's all about mechanics, right? And each level has 3 key components, 3 key study areas, right? So you end up with 9 study areas, but level 2 is built on top of level 1, and level 3 is built on top of level 2, just like a building. Well, that makes sense. Well, of course, Sensei. Yeah, but people don't treat their training that way. They treat everything like an individual coin or an individual stamp or an individual bottle of something or whatever, not like puzzle pieces or not like the floors in a building, right? The only reason why the 10th story or the 10th floor is stable and doesn't pancake and collapse down on everything else is because of the strength of everything that's holding it up, right? So you will be doing that. And there is a possibility that something will come out really, really close to the way you learned it, but not because you weren't paying attention to him and you just followed this plan in your head, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3. Look at that. Moguri Dori. High five. Ta-da. Right? It's because things just kind of played out in that direction, right? But let's go back to kata again, right? It's a model or an example of what? Okay? In the beginning, we have a tendency to pay attention to just the moves. But there was something that I learned a long time ago that I introduced during this past weekend. And I've introduced lots of classes and whatnot, but it was a huge part of this. And it was the concept of seeing the invisible, right? Being able to see the invisible. Right? And here's an example of that. Right? When you're looking at when you're looking at your partner's body and you're going to be doing a technique, the tendency is to look at the arm. Right? I'm going to do mushadori or onikudaki, or I'm going to do omode gyaku. So I'm looking at the hand, and I know I'm affecting the wrist and I'm affecting the forearm and whatnot. Right? And that makes his torso fall backwards and whatever. Right? But we can't see the invisible. We can't see what's really happening to his body because our eyes can only see the surface, can only see the bag of skin that's wrapped around everything else. Okay? Seeing the invisible is understanding what's going on inside a wrist joint to create the lock. Now I know exactly how to turn the hand, right? What's going on inside of a shoulder assembly, right? Whether I'm doing mushadori or onikudaki, which takes the body backwards, or I'm doing ogyaku or musodori, which rotates the head of the humerus in the opposite direction and brings them forward, right? I know what's going on inside that. So there's a word in Japanese, and it's actually based on Sanskrit, right? The word in Sanskrit is called prajna. This comes from our Mikyo, prajna, Prajna, prajna. In Japanese, the transliteration comes out hanya, okay, hanya. Either way, it means insight, okay? In the context of Mikyo, it's the insight necessary for enlightenment to take place. But insight, and I covered this a bunch of episodes ago. Didn't I cover like Ganho as a part of KUDEN? Or was that some other class that I did? It's one of the 8 happo of the Gyokoryu, right? The Kyon happo, not 8 techniques, 8 study skill areas for development, right? Ganho, ho is method, rules, ways, or whatever, and gan is I, right? So the other pronunciation, me, right? So metsuki, right? How you stare, where you point your eyes, right? Gan, right? Butsugan, Buddha eyes, enlightened eyes, whatever, right? So Ganho is this whole study in the Gyokoryu about how the eyes work, okay? If anybody's interested, I can make James, I don't know if you can dig it out quickly or whatever, but we have a program. I did a program. It was actually for just a class I did with the Inner Circle guys and went through 5 or 6 layers of how a warrior uses the eyes. What's that called? Bushinome, eyes of a warrior, right? Yeah, we start off with how the organ works, and this plays into this Ganho kind of thing, right? But combine that with this other area within the Gyoko school called seishin, right? Knowledge, okay? Clarity, that kind of thing. You surpass just how the eyes work with conventional sight, and then you end up with being able to have insight, right? Insight is having knowledge about something, being able to see insight, like knowing how an internal combustion engine or your Tesla engine, I don't care, right? How it works on the inside without tearing it apart, okay? You know how it works. So sight can only see to the surface, right? But the more we study things, the more we develop insight. And then that insight provides us with something called foresight, which means when this guy is coming at me, right, and I recognize his fight style or the range that he's probably in as a fighter, based on my research, based on my work in the dojo, defending and using my skills in this art against those kind of attack modes, based on the way his toes turned in or his feet positioned generally, are the shoulders rounded forward, are they pulled back, right? Where are the hands placed, that kind of thing, right? What kind of dynamics are going on in the legs, right? Are they stable and he's taking like more deliberate steps, or has he got a bounce and a spring to his step or whatever, right? Now that provides something called foresight, right? Chances are this guy's going to come at me in a couple of specific ways because that's how that fighter type, that's how people who train in that system, that's how they do things. Now, does that mean I get tunnel vision and only pay attention to that? No, because if I do that, that's the same as somebody who jumps on a kata and thinks they're going to use it step by step in a fight without paying attention to the bad guy. He punches, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Well, okay, give it a shot. Literally, right? So, but what we're looking at with this invisible is understanding how things work. So that's where I want to go with the kata thing during this class, okay, or during this session. Because and this is natural for beginners. This is natural at the Shu level and even the hot level, right? Where you break things, right? You start doing henka, right? As a matter of fact, one of my guys is Leon. You know what? Let's do this. Before I continue on with this, who's on? Who do I need to say hello to? Anybody have any questions or comments so far? Do we know if Lee's on? Because Lee asked a really, really good question during camp. And I tried to explain it, right? Because the last session, the last lesson that I gave was using the mandala to be able to identify the student's journey from beginning to mastery, right? And this had nothing to do with the techniques they learn, how many different strikes they learn, what style they're learning, or whatever. It's the development. It's the relationship with the lessons, with the techniques and whatnot, and how that gets processed and how growth occurs all the way toward mastery. And it's not accumulation. Accumulation is in phase 1 out of 5 phases, but you're actually going around the mandala multiple times. Anyway, is he on? Who do we have? Uh-oh, James might be having problems with it. You having problems with the system again? All right, we're going to have to come back to that. James has been having a problem since before we even logged in. It's not important. Okay, so ask a really good question relating what I was teaching with the mandala. And you know what? I'm going to peel that lesson out because normally the only way you're going to get it is if you came to camp or if you bought the camp recordings. So we're going to trim that out, and I'm just going to give that out, right? I used a whiteboard just like I do with Whiteboard Wednesday and all that, but it was a way to kind of, and this is mapped out on the Kongokai mandala, among other things. We spent a lot of time going back and forth to look at the different layers, not the different layers, but many different layers, because the theme for camp was elements of mastery. And I know a bunch of people didn't come into it either because they assumed they already knew everything about the Godai and these elements, even though we worked with 6 of them and not 5 of them, that's all bullshit. So I'm not doing that or whatever. And that's fine, right? People vet themselves out. People don't train with me because I'm old, fat, and bald. Has nothing to do with the lessons and whether they're right or wrong. They determine that the lessons are right or wrong based on what they can see and based on what they already know. What a lot of people, when they go to look at lessons online or they go to choose a teacher, hell, when people go to choose a church, right? They're looking for confirmation and validity that what they already believe is right. They're just looking for reinforcement. Okay, they don't want any holes in that ideology exposed, right? So it's easy to say we're looking for truth, but truth is not pleasant. Truth does not taste good, right? So either way. So anyway, so what we were doing is he had a question about the Shu Hari levels being overlapped on here, and what I was trying to explain was, right, you start off in the Shu level, SHU, not SHOE, right? Shu, SHU, right? Not hand. Shu means to copy or preserve, okay? So whatever your teacher demonstrates, the way they demonstrate it, whatever. Doesn't matter how many different teachers demonstrate the same kata and have nuances to it, right? You copy it, okay? If you were Japanese or if you were training with a Japanese teacher who is going to treat you like a warrior student and you say, why would I do it this way? Right? I pointed this out multiple times during the weekend, right? They're going to look at you and say, it doesn't matter because you can't do it anyway. Until you can do it, that question doesn't matter. Right? But ego wants to know when I would do it, why I would do it, or whatever, because it wants to know whether or not it's willing to do it. Okay? We'll throw shit away because we don't understand it long before we're ready to understand it. Okay? We have to be careful, right? I don't think a lot of people that envision themselves to be warriors would survive very long in a warrior society. And I don't mean because they don't have heart, right? They're just not willing to not willing to do what is needed to actually learn stuff from people who know, right? They want to take their assumptions and whatnot, or their past lessons, or their belief system or whatever, and then that's the litmus test for choosing teachers, choosing lessons, choosing whatever. Well, shit, if you already knew everything, why bother? Right? We go to teachers and we go to other systems and stuff to find gaps to make sure some jackwagon can't attack us through those things. Okay? But that's the hard part. The hard part is tying a freaking rope around ego and tossing its little ass in the corner so that you can actually get on with the process of learning. But that's my take on things. Of course, it was Hatsumi Sensei's take on things, or Vijika's take on things, whatever. Anyway, so, but what I had to explain to Lee was, right, the Shu stage, whatever the techniques are, you're learning them, right? At the Ha stage, you're breaking them. Ha, in this case, means break, not horse, not, there's a bunch of translations, right? Get the kanji right. It means to break, okay? So what you're doing is you're breaking the kata. You're doing technique substitution, right? This is the realm of henka. This is the realm of waza. They're not the same, right? And so people want to get fixated on, oh, you could do it this way, you could do it this way, you could do it this way. You get when, okay? When you can make all kinds of variations, but why would you use any one of those? It's good to have them, but you can get bogged down by, I mean, the more you learn, the more variations you make of a technique, right? Here's 8 variations of the quote unquote official Ichimonji no Kata. And then each one of those, we're going to make 8 variations of that variation. And then each one of those, we're going to, holy shit, you're going to, again, we're back to the original question, which is the title of this episode, which is what? How do I know which version to use in a fight? Okay. But all of those are about working them and getting those moves and those combinations. Like if you're a musician, right? Being able to play certain notes and chords and change and get things into a certain coordination, right? Or a certain, certain, just into muscle memory and whatnot. So you don't have to think about it when you need it. So it's all about that. But the ultimate goal is to hit that Ri stage, R-I, right? B. B means to transcend, to go beyond. Okay? This isn't, I mean, it's not, but it's not. Here's what the beginner mind does when they hear Hatsumi Sensei's lesson, that you're supposed to throw the kata away. Well, I don't need him anyway, so I'm just going to make shit up. Okay, but how do you know you're doing it right? Well, it worked. I dropped the guy. It doesn't mean you were doing ninjutsu. Right? So who was he talking to when he said, you don't need the kata, throw it away? It's getting in your way. He was talking to upper level people who were trapped in the kata and they can't break through to the next level of training. If you can't do the kata right 8 out of 10 times at 80% speed, you don't throw the kata away. You still need the form to keep you on track. But either way, the Shu and the Ha stage, we keep working those until you discover the principles and concepts that make the base kata and all variations that spin off of it the same thing. Okay? Any henka is doing the same thing the initial model is doing. To him, the strategy is the same. The tactics are the same. The moves could be different, but what you're doing to him, right? There's this, there's a kata in Gyokoryu, Joryaku no Maki, Renyo, heavenly palanquin, like a wheelless chariot kind of thing, right? And there's another one, what the hell's it called? Sakanagare, right? Sloping bank, right? I think that one is in the Kukishinden school. Either way, right? I looked this shit up because I'm not memorizing all these names. So, but the idea behind both of these kata, even though they come from different lineages and the kata look completely different, are both the same. Okay? The strategy is to take this guy for a ride. right? You let them do what they're doing, and you just exaggerate that movement, whatever they're doing, and lead them out until they're stretched out and their strength breaks. Okay. In Sakanagare, there's a momentum thing going on in either way, right? So there's this, again, this is the hidden. It's not the step-by-step stuff. But Ri, to transcend, means that you understand the principles and concepts that you're using to control this person, the situation, the environment, and all that. And so it now doesn't matter what you do physically, because what you do will always be in line with what's going on, right? So I'll share a couple of little things that we use to get to a higher kind of position. I call them frameworks. People freak out like, I'm not doing that because that's not the way they do it in Japan. Fantastic. But if you go to Japan, all the master teachers teach differently. Some focus on balance, some focus on straight reality, some focus on get the damn kata right before I'm going to show you anything else. Some focus on precision, okay? So even though you work in the same kata, what aspect, what dynamic, right? What's their primary focus, right? So anyway, so I had to let him in on this idea that the transcendence kind of thing happens when you don't need the form anymore. And by sticking to the form, you get in your own way. Okay. So anyway, James, you get things fixed? Are we in a better place at the moment?
Seems to be.
Nope, guess not. It's not my speaker, is it? It's not my speaker. We were just talking earlier. Huh. Your mic is showing a green bar, but it's not moving when you talk. Sorry, guys, we're having a little glitch here.
Better?
And I don't want to bring up that chat screen because every time we've done it before, some jackwagon hijacks things, and then I want to reach through a screen and grab somebody by the throat. Not just by the throat, like entirely, right? Just the windpipe at the front, right? It's the quickest access to get the controller up here to shut down. Anyway, all right. So the invisible, right? Being able to see the invisible. So one of the first things we introduced to students in Module 2, so they've been through training. I hate using the term beginner stages, but they were a beginner, right? And so for about the first 4 to 6 months, they're learning basics, right? Kind of mind striking, all that kind of stuff. They get some defensive kind of things. But what we're really focusing on in Mod 1 is, statistically speaking, in the U.S. and most of the Western world, there is a grouping of attack situations that happen a lot, right? And somebody doesn't have to be trained to do it. There's grabs, there's like clothing grabs, different places, front, sleeves, those kind of things. Wrist grabs, yes, they really do happen, right? Bear hugs, punches, kicks, whatever, right? Just not anything wild and crazy, just basically flailing, kind of, whatever, right? And so we want to get those things out of the way first off, because I can't speak for the UK or Australia because I haven't looked up your statistics, but in the US, 95 to 98% of assaults that happen, period, right? Somebody that has gone through our Mod 1 and is beginning or in the middle of Mod 2 should be able to handle those things. We need to get those things out of the way right off the bat, so everything else becomes an escalation of, right? This guy's better at, or he's a certain attacker type, or whatever, and you have to neutralize that. Okay, you have to. What was the other phrase I used over the weekend? Make sense out of the chaos, because it's not just a one-off. He grabbed you to tell you something, you need to get him off of you, or he's throwing a punch because he was angry, and you shift and neutralize that, and he goes, "Oh shit, wrong. I guess I picked the wrong victim." Okay, and you're moving more and more toward that person who it's not the opportunistic thug. It's the person who is targeting you. The closer you get to being attacked by somebody who is absolutely targeting you, the harder self-defense gets, because you can get away from them, but they're not going to stop coming. And even if they can't get to you, they'll get to you via your family or your friends or whatever. Right? So again, being able to see the invisible, right? But we have this one framework, we just affectionately call it the 5Ds, where you understand the phases that a fight goes through. And so this, by knowing where I am in the chaos, based on what's happening, by what results I'm getting, right? I know what I should be focusing on. I know what skills and techniques I need to be prioritizing, okay? So if you have some paper, you can write this stuff down. Otherwise, if you have the recording, you can pause this, go get some paper. Otherwise, go back later and get the recording, okay? But the 5Ds are discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern. I'll say it again. Discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern. Okay? Deliver. Not to beef, not to chicken, deliver. Okay? That's my standing joke. Most of my students don't laugh anymore because they've heard it over and over again. Okay? So when I first learned it, we didn't have this set of Ds. We just called it what it was, right? So phase one with discern is I'm paying attention. I'm tuning in, right? How is he positioning his body? How is he positioning his feet? How is he coming at me? What kind of attacker does he look like? Yeah, but Sensei, what if he's like already wrapped around you? He's already grabbed you in a bear hug. What kind of pressure, right? Where do I feel the pressure? What's he attacking? Where am I free and open? Right? Those kind of things. I'm paying attention to the condition because I'm answering the question, what's happening? Okay? I need to neutralize certain things, right? I need to maintain distance, or if he's on me, I need to feel pressure. I need to neutralize his attempt to pull me or push me and break me off or break my balance so that he has a harder time doing the next thing. Okay? But either way, if he's on me, then one shifts into two really, really quickly, because the second D, defend, is not whipping his ass. Defend is neutralizing the force of his attack. Okay? That means evading the punch or kick, or when he grabs me, sinking, shifting, or whatever, so he doesn't unbalance me. He doesn't knock me off balance. Okay, so my framework neutralizes what he's trying to do. So phases 1 and 2 neutralize his attempt to do 3 and 4. 3 is unbalancing and 4 is delivering, right? Actually flat out damaging. Okay. So these things match up, right? Do you have to learn this stuff? No, you can do whatever you want. Okay. But this allows you to see the invisible. Okay. Most people, all they see are, my grandfather used to call it assholes in tin cups, right? They just see feet, hands, whatever, flying, people grabbing, chokes happening, whatever. They see what the eyes can see. But what they can't see is what's going on and what needs to be neutralized. Or is it already neutralized and so he can't stop you from doing your thing? Most people try to rush a technique. Okay? I'm sure you guys, I'm singing to the choir here, but they try to rush a technique because, again, they're stuck on Kata as this thing. And typically most people gravitate toward, and this was a huge warning over the weekend, right? They tend to gravitate toward having preferences. I like that technique. I don't like that technique. So guess what gets more practice and guess what doesn't get any practice at all. Okay. I don't practice what's challenging. I don't practice what I don't like. I don't practice what I don't see any value in, except it was passed down through how many generations of people that used it to stay alive. Okay. Well, I don't understand it. Well, okay. Before I throw something away, I might ask myself, what does this do? Okay? Most people throw away things that are challenging and keep the stuff that it's easy. Well, if I keep the stuff that's easy, then I end up fighting like everybody else. If I fight like everybody else, he knows what I'm going to be able. He knows what I'm going to do, so he already has defenses for him. My job is harder with easy. His job is harder when I do things that I had to work to earn because most people are going to stay away from it. It's too hard, Sensei. Okay, well, go do something easy. Okay, I wish you well. Right? If it were easy, everybody could do it. But if everybody could do it, we wouldn't have any advantage. Right? So anyway, back to this. Okay, so second D is defend, but it's not what most people think of as defend. We're not whipping his ass. We're not whipping a mushadori on or whatever. We are neutralizing what he's trying to do to us. Okay? And in the process of that, we're looking and watching for a moment when we might have an opportunity to counterattack, right? And again, I'm still not whipping his ass, right? I am trying to break his kamae. I am trying to destabilize his body, confuse his mind, or create doubt in his heart. Okay? That's called unbalancing. That's called kuzush, right? Balance breaking, right? But you can break balance physically, mentally, right? Psychologically, that's called confusion, and you can break it in the heart, okay? They're not so sure anymore, right? They thought they could whip your ass, and all of a sudden, right? But there's a gap. He missed and whatever. There's an opening, and I tag it, right? But I'm not hitting him just for the sake of hitting him. I'm hitting him because I'm always discerning. I'm always paying attention, right? What was the effect of that? And you have to be able to get to a point where you don't think in words. You know immediately when that shot landed whether you have the time to fit another one in. We're not, again, my grandfather's thing. We're not just throwing assholes in tin cups, right? Not just throwing a whole bunch of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, okay? Does that work? Sure. People do it all the time, okay? I don't know about you, but I don't buy lottery tickets because I don't base my life and my success on luck. Will I accept lottery tickets if somebody buys one for me? Sure. But I'm not expending my resources betting on luck, right? And we have luck as a part of our training as well, but that's not because you didn't freaking prepare, okay? We're not betting on luck, but we'll accept lucky moments, right? So anyway, so one of these shots or him missing or whatever, where it either slows him down or either way, it slows him down, right? So phase 3 happens regardless of whether I do it, he slips, he misses and kind of loses his balance a little bit or whatever. Phase 3, disrupt, unbalancing, is not necessarily me grabbing him to break his balance. Okay? The disrupts, I know I'm in the disrupt stage when he can't do the next thing he wants to do to me the way he wants to do it. He's fighting his body. He's fighting gravity. He's fighting inertia. He's fighting anything but me, which means he can't stop me from doing my technique. He can't stop me from landing the next punch. He can't stop me from whipping a mushadori on him, or he can't stop me from doing the throw. Right? When this thing that's going on, this condition and situation is going on, and these are Hatsumi Sensei's words, just in case you don't trust mine, okay? He can't get away from me. He can't escape. He can't evade. He can't resist. He can't defend. All he's left with in that moment is to hope you don't kill him. I am free to do my technique because there's no resistance. This training begins in the Sanshin. Sanshin no Kata. Hatsumi Sensei did a video a long time ago. I think it was the first iteration of the Gyokoryu, maybe. I don't know. There's how many volumes now, right? But it was Sanshin and Kyonopo was in there, and there might have been something else. But Sanshin, the premise of Sanshin was identified as penetration. How do I penetrate his defenses where he can't stop me? He can't block, he can't escape, he can't defend, he can't counter. Not just doing moves. Okay? There is an end result and there is a prerequisite. There is a necessity that allows a master warrior to always be successful. Well, you get it virtually, right? Because you can still die, right? If I rush it, I could get lucky, right? But if you go to do any particular move and they flinch, they lock up, they bring a hand up to cover or whatever, right? They weren't off balance. Off balance is there's a moral response. Moral response is this flinch response where you're slipping or falling and your hands reach out or they reach up for the clouds or whatever, right? You're not coming into center. A flinch survival mechanism brings the limbs in towards center to protect the life-sustaining systems. A moral response, also known as an oh shit response, the limbs flail to counterbalance, to counter the fall. They don't come into center because that's going to add more weight to the falling direction. Okay? Your body doesn't have to think this way. Your body's pre-wired for this. Okay? Which is why flinch responses and all that have to be factored in to and understood as to why a technique works. Okay? Anyway, so the deliver stage is easy. That's what everybody wants to jump to, right? He threw something at me. I'm just going to start throwing a whole bunch of shit at him, right? And eventually people end up looking like 2 6-year-olds in a sandbox slap fighting. Right? I know they're not slap fighting, but that's what it looks like to me. Anyway, and then the final discern is after I've locked him up, put him down, he's running off, whatever. The discern stage is what's next. Okay? Is that stage the end of things, at least for now, or is this guy picking himself back up and coming back in which case this stage of discern, which would have been 5, is now number 1. It's the discern of the next cycle. Or I put this guy down, right? That was the 5, but the discerning is not just focused on him. That's a big thing that upper, intermediate, advanced students, it's been my experience teaching seminars, not just in my own dojo, going around helping, watching people in Japan, whatever. Unless the teacher says, do this thing, nobody remembers to do it. When I put my partner down, once I get past the stage of step by step and I understand the dynamics and I get good at the technique, okay, where that just becomes easier and easier, I have to remember phase 5. The physical part's over, but what should I be paying attention to? Not just him, but my surroundings. What else is going on? Somebody else rushing in? Did a weapon come out? Whatever, okay? So one of the things I have my advanced students do is they put somebody down and they immediately, right, they've got him locked up and they immediately scan their surroundings, okay? Or if it's Ichimonji no Kata, right? One, bonk, he's going that way. I want to scan quickly, right? Or I use my peripheral vision and scan, soften my sight consciousness to pay attention to my surroundings, right? Because that little skirmish may be over, but the attack may not be, right? The next attack may be coming from another direction. And this comes from understanding battlefield, right? Most people that want to argue this shit have only ever been on one-on-one kind of things, and they lucked out because the other guy fought the same way they did. They used the same skills, the same tactics, or whatever, right? Somebody just sent me something earlier today. It was 2 guys that looked like they were in the pool or near a pool or whatever. It was outside. They were both shirtless or whatever. And one guy's coming in to grab the other guy, and the other guy's backing out, and the knife is about to impale him in the chest. Huge difference between sport fighting or fighting for bravado and somebody who is willing to do whatever to win, survive, whatever. Okay. So anyway, so we use this framework because one of the first invisible things I want to introduce the student to are the phases, right? What's going on? Are you are you on the defense, right? Are you actively trying to keep him from yanking you off balance, tackling you, punching, kicking, whatever? In which case, doing your moves on him, right? How many times? I mean, Kata is an ideal, right? The Kata says he throws a punch, you do uke nagash, and then you kill his ass. Or you do uke nagash, you do uke nagash, and then you do XYZ. Okay? Those are ideals. Okay? There are lessons hidden in those things. Okay? Because if I neutralized the first punch coming in, I could do Ichimonji no Kata or any of the Kihon where one uke nagash and then there's a follow-up. So what about these Kata that have two? Or there's a skirmish and then all of a sudden, like you kick him, your partner backs away and then he comes back in with something else. These are little snapshots in the fight. He wouldn't be throwing a second punch if you neutralized him and started to break his balance on the first one. So he's still free to move. Here it comes, right? So the front end, if I'm still dealing with shit he's throwing, this is defense mode. Keep him from damaging me. And what I'm looking for is an opportunity to break his balance. Fantastic. If he slips, I do something, breaks his balance or whatever, I might start to move in to do a defensive tactic. But if he recovers himself, guess what? I'm back in dealing with shit because as soon as he catches his balance, he's back in and on it. So if I can know where I am, not memorizing it, by feel, by intuitive sense, if I'm ducking shit, then that's my job. The tactics and shit in my toolbox is for dealing with neutralizing his attack. If he's off balance, if I have control, now the tools that come out are the techniques that everybody thinks are cool. Personally, I think Kamae is the coolest shit you could ever learn. Because if he can't hit you, he can't hurt you. If he can't hurt you, he can't beat you. Right? You just make it as difficult as possible for him to get at you to begin with. Right? This is not a karate-based martial art where stances are a necessary evil that you learn so you can get onto the cool shit. Right? In ninjutsu, all the most important lessons, all the high-level stuff is taught first because that's the most important stuff. The Joryaku no Maki, the Shodan no Maki are not taught first because they're for the beginners. They're taught first because they all the techniques contain all the principles and concepts that are necessary for you to get first, which is why Takamasa Sensei said, but all you needed was the Kyonapo. But the Kyonapo is made up of the Sanshin and made up of all the Kihon no Kihon. Proper footwork, proper angling, proper timing, those kind of things, right? So anyway, so that's one way to look at the invisible. Okay. Another way to look at this is when you're looking at a kata, instead of looking at what I'm doing, like he threw a punch, and so I'm going to do this move. Okay. If I can just use a little bit of insight and ask why that punch, why that angle at this target? Because it was open. Okay. So if I don't have it open, my partner can't throw that. Right? We explore this in Mod 1. Right? We teach like a basic kind of a calming situation. Let me shift my camera here. Those of you on audio only, I apologize, but I'm kind of like shushing a kid. My hands are down, just kind of like calm down, man, relax, right? And so after a student learns the step-by-step mechanics of a mirror side wrist grab, cross side wrist grab, or whatever, as they're about to graduate out from Mod 1 to Mod 2, what I want them to be able to see is not only will the attacker grab based on where their hands are, their wrist is in space, not just in front of the guy, but the level, right? So if you're up here, your hands are up in front of your face, palms out, and you're saying, hey, man, calm down, we have defenses for when he does a double wrist grab because your hands are up. Yeah, but what if he doesn't grab your wrist? What if he punches you in the gut? then we have low block defenses for that, because there's only so many things you can do from here, right? It's the reality of a human body. It's only so many things you can do with a human body, and only so many things you can do to a human body. The cool thing about these arts is, look at all the cool shit you can do, right? But elbows only move one way without being dislocated. Shoulders move a certain way without being dislocated. Wrist move a certain way without being dislocated, right? There's only so far behind you can get your elbows, right? I don't care how flexible you are, right? If you take them beyond that, well, you're going to hear a sucking, crackling, popping noise, right? But the premise is, if I understand that my positioning combined with his fight style, which means his preferences, my positioning combined with his fight style will create certain options. And there won't be options in another direction, right? Since I don't know why he's throwing a hook punch, I just tackle you. Yeah, but we're not defending against you. We're not defending against a shoot fighter. We're defending against a boxer type guy who throws a fucking haymaker. Don't cross fight styles. Well, that's what MMA's for. Yeah, watch MMA fighters and tell me that they don't have a primary and a secondary backup. Maybe every once in a while somebody's good at like a third thing, but no. They all have primaries, they have a secondary, and after that it really becomes a stretch. Okay? I understand it's mixed martial arts. Okay? But you still have people that are predominantly shoot fighters, wrestlers. You have people that are predominantly puncher kickers. So no, not everything is possible. Doesn't work that way. Not for most fighters. Okay? Which is what needed to have such a high allure for a lot of people who were really looking for that kind of thing, where no technique, no skill is more important or preferred over any other one, which was actually the second realm that students move into when I was covering the student journey. You'll see it when I post it up. We'll send a thing out to let everybody know that it's available. But the first one is collecting techniques. But we have to counter ego's tendency to want to pick favorites or ignore things it doesn't like or doesn't understand, or it's too challenging or whatever, right? And so the second phase is the phase of equality or equanimity or value, where we recognize that all techniques have equal value, which is zero. That zero is either potential or it's nothing, okay? In any given technique, in any given fight, in any given attack scenario, any technique is either a good answer, a maybe, or the worst fucking thing you could try to do. So we need the next phase, which is a discerning mind, a way to assess, not just with the left brain and not just with your eyes, but the tactile sense, which in a full speed fight at close range, the tactile sense needs to take precedence and priority over the eyes. Because up close, you can't see the rest of his body, which is why in the scrolls it says to maintain at least 3 points of contact with his body. That's how we see close range. Sense of touch. Okay? Not just throwing shit at the wind, okay? Or fighting harder or whatever. Okay? Do those things work? Of course they work. If they didn't work, people wouldn't do them. But there's a reason this is called enlightened self-defense. And not just, well, lots of people call it, our fight style. We just talked about that over the weekend. You can't see James's face, but we just talked about it over the weekend. Other people who have visited Japan, right? It just popped out. We were talking about certain hidden meanings. People are talking about certain things in Japan. And there's this sucking air through the teeth. There's this wet sucking sound, right? Which means you're not getting what you just asked for. But what they'll say is they'll go, oh, very difficult. Very difficult. I think so. Yeah. which to a Westerner is like, yeah, okay, but what do I have to do to get it? But what they're telling you is, yeah, no, that's not happening. But because of the politeness levels they have, they're not going to come right out and say it. So, but if you hear that sucking air through wet teeth, that kind of thing, oh, very difficult. Very difficult. Okay. It's difficult here means, well, yeah, but there's a way to make that happen. Okay. In Japan, no, that's not what that means. That means no. Just like when a Japanese teacher, one of the Soke or the Shihan, says, I think this is a good ninja idea, or I suggest that you look at this. I suggest that you consider training this way. To a Westerner, that's a suggestion. I can do it or not. But in Japan, the teacher is telling you to do that. If you want this outcome, if you want to be studying with me, if you want to be studying this art, do that thing. Well, that's not what he said. That's what he said in Japanese. Okay? Because it's not just the words, it's the meaning. And we all know that because we have certain things with meanings here too. If you're from the South, you know exactly what bless his heart means. Okay? In the North, we often think that that's, oh, weren't they so nice? They said, bless his heart. Yeah. All my Southern friends know exactly what that means. Okay? That boy is so ugly. Bless his heart. Right? It allows them to be rude, but make it sound nice. Really cool shit. Anyway, right? So, but if we can look at our techniques from what's not being said, because what's being described is what's happening, but we can't see inside of his head. We can't see inside of his level of experience. We can't see inside of his preferences. We can't see inside of his heart. Why? Why that type of attack? And then once we see it, I covered this during a Whiteboard Wednesday. Was it 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago? When did I cover Ho-Ho? When did I cover the legs? Was that like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that? One of my teachers, when he was teaching this thing, the lesson is when you look at someone's legs, right? Somebody in front of you, if you see the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, the way their legs are shaped, that tells you so much about the inside. It tells you so much about their experience, right? How they've used their legs in the past because they've grown to adapt to this thing they do all the time, right? It tells you about a little bit about their personality, right? Are they imperative? Are they laid back? A personality, B personality. There's all kinds of stuff going on, right? So when I see the way somebody's moving or positioning their body or whatever, it should be telling me about their fight style. But I'm never going to learn that if I only ever defend against classical ski, right? So how do I know what technique to use? All right. Now, this is going to sound super simple. So simple that the average student will blow it off, just like they blow off when the student or when the teacher says, I suggest that you work on, and they're pointing out something that student doesn't like to do. And a Western student decides, well, I'm not going to do it because it was just a suggestion. He didn't tell me I wasn't getting promoted again if I didn't do it. Oh, well. That was very 6-year-old of the person, right? Because I'm not doing it unless there's a cookie involved for me. What the hell's that? How about if you don't learn this and you need it in a life or death situation, you'll die. How's that for a cookie? Okay? Well, I won't get into fights where that's needed. Well, if you have that kind of fucking ESP, then what do you need martial arts for? Right? So anyway, there's a lesson in the scrolls of the Tagagi Yoshin school. I think it's Tagagi Yoshin. Because they have an analogy about catching swords, and there's an analogy with a bee, and it doesn't have to be a sword. It could be any weapon. It could be catching him, right? You catch them like you would catch a bee. Right? The hell's that mean? right? Well, if you've ever caught a bee, right, or caught a fly or anything like that, right? The more pressure you have, right? If it's a fly, the more pressure you have, the more it's going to fight, the more it's bouncing around in your hands in there, right? But bees become docile when the sun goes down, right? They're saving energy for foraging for food and stuff the next day, right? So if the grip is light, or there's this big pocket in there, and there's no tension, it'll just sit there and wait. And then when you open it up, it'll fly away. But if you press too much, if there's too much force, you'll get stung. It's the same thing. Too much force, grabbing a weapon, grabbing him, whatever. What you're getting is a flinch response. You're getting a defensive response, that kind of thing. It's the same analogy. That's not the one. Anyway, so, but there's all this cool shit hidden in the scrolls. So, but there is this secret for always having the right technique at the right time. Right? And this is how a ninja happens to do it. Right? And again, this is going to sound so just idiotically simple that the temptation will be to just blow it off. But the amount of training that goes in to being able to do this thing for most students is unimaginable. But I'm trusting that it's not unimaginable for you, or you wouldn't be here listening to me talking for over an hour. Right? Most students binge watch physical techniques, right? Because they just want to watch the cool shit. They don't want to learn what makes the cool shit cool. They just want to look at the, they want to be entertained. So the lesson is to never do a technique that's not already working. See, to me, that makes me go, well, how the hell do I know it's already working? Because this implies that I'm not trying to do a technique to them. This implies that I am catching something that is already happening. Like, I don't try to do a rear hip throw unless their balance is toward the back end of their feet, toward their heels, or they're already stumbling or falling in that direction, and I just aggravate the situation, right? Or something has occurred. Here's a for instance, right? This is something that my second degrees heading to third degree have to be able to do, where they push his buttons to make him give you what you need for your technique to work. Here's a simple way to do a rear hip throw, right? When I move in to catch him in Kumiuchi, because we often catch in Kumiuchi, or you can catch him, I don't care how you catch him. It doesn't matter to me, right? We normally start from a dead static position. So the model teaches you to do things that break his balance so the throw is easy. But the name for the throw, Osoto Nage, has nothing to do with the first couple of pieces where you're breaking his balance. Osoto Nage, the name points to what you're doing to steer him in a certain direction after his balance is broken. Same thing with Onikudaki. All the shit to grab his arm in an L shape before you torque on it is entering. It's iri. Onikudaki is what you're doing from the moment you get his arm into his shoulder into a locked position and you start to torque on it. Everything that you do to put that into position, as long as he has control of that shoulder, is not Onikudaki. Okay? So the easiest way to get an Osoto Nage on somebody is when I put my hands on him, right? Or almost, right? Because if he grabs me and I reach out with my hands and then just suddenly don't grab, all that stuff that his body did to brace for impact will be taken away and he'll fall, right? Great. Okay. Or I tug slightly. When I grab, I don't tug with my arms. The way I grab pulls the material, but my arms and shoulders don't go anywhere. My spine doesn't go anywhere. If I activate muscles, I have to deactivate to go in the opposite direction. But if I use certain muscles, this is part of Shuho, understanding how the fingers, hands, and arms work. Okay? If I grab with a Shikanken, it creates a pull, but I'm not pulling. What happens when I pull him? the posterior muscles in the back of his body fire to not be pulled backwards. So if I pull quickly and let go, he will fire muscles, not need them, right? Or I pull him forward, so he fires muscles to get himself back because he's going to resist. Unless this guy is high on crack and you stood him up to try something on him, but he's really unconscious, he's going to fire in the opposite direction. So I induce action forward because I want him to pull back. When he pulls back, that's when I step in to do the throw because he's already going in that direction. Okay? If somebody throws a punch, right? They throw a punch and they retract the arm. They throw a punch and they retract the arm. Why do they retract the arm? Because they want to punch you again, right? Whether they hit you or not, they're going to punch and retract. They're reloading, right? So instead of starting from a kumiuchi and trying to get a mushadori on somebody, now don't not do these if you're at this level, right? But if I know that I'm going to punch and retract, then I'm going to uke the gash and then throw my arm. I'm just going to literally throw my loose arm up over his forearm so his retraction catches my arm. Now I'm already in there. And now when he throws the punch with the other side, my evasion whips a mushadori on the arm but he didn't see that as a threat. Didn't we just do something like that this weekend? We did throw flow or something, right? Went from one locker hold to another one. We allowed the attacker to stop our technique. So we could see, here's the invisible, that any failed technique is actually the setup for something different. In that instant, I have to know what that new thing is instead of fighting to keep the thing that he's resisting. His resistance does something, right? But in this case, right, he may lock down really hard to control that arm that I threw in there. He thinks he's pinned me. But when he throws the next punch, it's not just me evading. When he throws that next punch to clock me, the arm that's pinning mine will weaken because he can't be powerful on both sides. He can't hit me hard and hold my arm firmly. So my evasion, right? That side loosens up so he can jack me with the other side. And that is what allows me to do the mushadori. But it's already working. His elbow is already bent. I didn't have to put it in that V position. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Close to his body, elbow down. All I have to do is back up into his forearm to get his hand in line with his shoulders. I don't even have to lift up on the elbow yet. When you get this, the chest will start to lift up and forward. Then you can crank that elbow. How do I know when to crank the elbow? Because you'll feel the shoulder go weak. When it's seated, it's strong. You can't apply a mushadori. Your partner will dance around you. But when you move into the right position and it opens up for reach, for range of motion, when the strength breaks, you will feel it. That's when you lift. So we are looking for the invisible. We have to develop the insight to understand how to know when something is already there. The condition exists. I'm in the right place. The conditions are right. Do the next move. Shirai Sensei describes it this way. Best timing do, best action make. I know, that's Japanese syntax. But he reduces everything to timing. Right? There is a best time for a fist to land for an uke nagash. There is a best time for the forearm to land for this more of a tagagi shinden fudo receiving arm. There is a best time to direct the hand arm or to step in to catch for the ganseki or whatever. Does that mean that if you miss that, you're off? No, there's a range where the window's open, but if you're early, he'll close it off because he sees you coming. If you're late, you get slammed because you missed your opportunity. Okay? But this is more a matter of seeing not with your eyes. Okay? Feeling. Hatsumi Sensei had, God, for decades, right? It's the feeling. Sometimes he's talking emotions. Sometimes he's talking about kind of feeling their pressure and whatnot, and they're not even touching you yet. But a lot of times it's tactile feeling. But to get in touch with that, you have to stop thinking about the next move, which means I have to do more work with my physical step-by-step mechanics until I hit the point where I don't have to think about the move. Because if I still have to think about what I'm doing with my arm, where I put my foot, when to move, all that kind of stuff, then I'm not ready for this level of training, right? This transcendence, okay? Right? We can transcend Shu, straight out form. Ichimoji no Kata, don't change it. This is the only model I want you to see, that I want to see from you, okay? We transcend that when a student can do that 8 out of 10 times correctly, okay? No mistakes. 8 out of 10 times correctly. Fantastic. Great. Now we transcend that and we go where? Ha stage. Now we start showing you all the different ways that you could do Ichimoji no Kata because he might have an arm that's in the way and you can't do the Omoteshito. He might be more square forward or whatever. Because remember, this stuff, your base models are based on this guy being profiled when he moves in. He's doing ski. What about the boxer? Right? What about the jabber right cross? What about the guy who jabs and comes up with an uppercut? You go in there too soon or not paying attention to your alignment or your angling or whatever, and this guy's a jab, jab, uppercut kind of guy, you're not landing that omote gyaku. Okay? There's all kinds of little factors here, but how do I know? Well, I have to be paying attention to more than just step by step. The kata isn't just a model for what I'm doing with a body part against his body part in this moment. And then I'm going to do something else. There's the invisible, right? The force that I apply, the uke nagash, the type of uke nagash. In our mod 4, a student gets 4 types of uke nagash. And then there's a couple added in mod 3, more added in mod 4. There's a variation of these things in mod 5. So by the time they get to black belt, what do we figure? They've learned 15 kamae. They've learned 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a dozen different ways to do uke nagash by Shodan. Okay, but the force that goes into it will determine how far his arm moves or not. I yelled at a student this past weekend that should have known better because he was doing these little bitch slaps to the inside of the arm. He thought he was doing uke nagash, but a hook punch would have broken right through that. Okay, and I did it in a very stern way because he's almost a Shodan. But it's all out of love because if it doesn't get fixed, that's going to get him killed, no matter how good the rest of the techniques are. Okay? So remember, okay, this is kind of like the statement in the Bible, right? The statement is the wages of sin are death. Okay, sin was an archer's term. You miss your mark. Your technique sucks. Whatever. Okay? Your payoff that you get for shitty technique, wrong timing, bad choices of techniques or skills, not paying attention to what's going on, misreading or misassessing or whatever, we'd be lucky if we just get beaten up. Okay? The wages, right? This is not a rule-laden contest, right? The wages of screwing up in a survival situation are death. Okay? So That's an invisible that people can't see because you're not in the process of dying. So there's that, right? Or when you're watching your teacher demonstrate a technique, the uke doesn't die. Right? We covered some very specific dynamics combining sanshin and these elements by looking at and bringing some mikyo things in. You're doing certain things with your body, but what's going on in your head? What are you saying? Are you saying anything, either to yourself inside or to them? Right? At one point, I had people in a position to do Ichimon's no Kata and had them look right at their partner and say, I'm going to fucking kill you. That was a shock for a bunch of people. But isn't that what the feeling in Ichimon's no Kamae is? If you come at me, I will kill you. How is it that people are getting away with knowing that, doing the Kamae, but they can't say it out loud? Well, I know what it is. Tell him. And if your Kamae is such that it is weak, or he doesn't believe that if you come in and it's a loaded trap, then you're not communicating. The only person that should want to come in on you when you have that look, you have used those words, there's a look in your eyes, and your Kamae is right. The only person that's going to come in is going to come in no matter what. Taking up Kamae should dissuade them. And if it doesn't, then you know this person is actively trying to beat, break, or kill you. It's kind of like if I pull a knife and I go, then not a good idea, dude. And he comes anyway. Holy shit. This guy is either batshit crazy or he wants you that badly that right minimal effort, right? I just tried to restrain him. Well, yeah, that wasn't his plan. Right? That's why we have use of force. Right? So there's a lot of this invisible thing, but how to know the right technique. There's research into different fight styles and paying attention to how people do things, right? There's paying attention to clothing. There's paying attention to the pressure and alignment, right? A lot of people try to do a mushadori or a technique or whatever when they can't even get their arm past his arm because of the initial alignment, and it doesn't allow for freedom of movement with that arm to even enter to try to catch it. They're just not paying attention. What they're paying attention to is I'm supposed to move my arm over his elbow to catch his elbow, to bend it like a V, and that'll put him down. No. Not if the shoulder doesn't lock right. Not if you can't get in there. Not if, no. Well, maybe, Sensei. You don't know. You're right. You could get lucky. I'm cool with that. And again, I'm saying you generally. I apologize if I punched an ego. I didn't mean to. Okay, I'll be nice today. All right. So, James, are you in? Do you have? Are we still having a mic problem? Or are you good? Or did you check your general settings under audio to make sure that the right thing was selected? Oh, you did. Okay. You know what? Can I bring up the chat over here without it showing to everybody? Can I do that? Where is it? Chat. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, look at that. Dave Fletch is here. Born Divine. Chris McLaurin. Didn't you have enough over the weekend? What is... Oh, Trinity says she can hear you. Why can I not hear?
I don't know.
My mic is good. Hold on a second. Let me check my settings. Maybe it's me. I don't think so. Maybe. Default microphone. Change that over to Yeti. Hold on a second. Say something now, James.
Can you hear me now?
Holy shit! Look at that. Something flipped in the settings. I don't know what the hell happened. Anyway, hey, look. I got it up now. So apparently, Chris said no, he didn't have enough over the weekend. Fantastic. I love it. Right? I still had to go home. All right. Let's see. My daughter Trinity was in for the whole weekend. Dave Fletch, Carl McClellan. Carl. Yeah, so it was a setting on mine. Sorry. Holy shit. Alrighty then. Oh my goodness, my eyes are burning. Freaking allergies. All right, so since you already have everything up, any questions or comments that you see that that I missed? You know, I'm going to point this out, and I think it's funny. Okay, we have had people that I don't know if they know that I read comments just because I don't answer. But we have people showing up for these damn shows and for Whiteboard Wednesdays that are very polite while they're here. They leave some really fucked up comments under videos. I just thought I'd say that. That's like coming to class and being really polite to the teacher, but telling your friends, well, I only go there because it's the closest place and I train and whatnot. This guy really doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. If I were you, I wouldn't go. I'm only sticking it out so I can get my black belt. I think that's pretty freaking interesting. From somebody who studies ego, I think it's interesting. Anyway, what else? Anything? All I see is people that can hear you. It's good to see Carl on again. Let's see.
Dave said training with real intention is so important.
Yeah, so one of the things that we covered doing Kata, I think it was Kata, was visualizing, right? Because what I was taught way back, and we're talking, like I got involved in, like I said, mid to late 80, like then I had to arrange for military stuff and to be able to do it like full on. So that started January of 81, I think. Anyway, one of the first things we were given when we were doing a knife hand was to not think about striking, right? A knife hand is delivered as though you had a short sword in your hand and you were lopping off whatever you were making contact with, whether it was the head, an arm, whatever. So one of the things I gave everybody was this visualization, right? Strike like you are lopping off that piece, right? Now, of course, we were going slowly, however, but we brought in word, we brought in the visualization, we brought in, obviously, you're going through the actions, okay? And for those of you in Mikyo, going through that side of the training, right? Your kamae and your strikes and your actions are just seen as full body mudra. Okay? They're just full body mudra. These positions and gestures and things like that, right? So if you can get yourself wrapped around that, then you are your training takes on a truly experiential nature where your partner, your uke, right? Now, and there's two words that we used as well. I'll talk about this in a minute. So right now I'm just going to say training partner. Your training partner is a surrogate for the attacker you would actually be dealing with. That doesn't mean you have to go fast and hard and whatnot, but you need to relate to them the same way you would relate to somebody who is trying to beat, break, or kill you. When they are playing the role of a techie, T-E-K-I, techie, attacker. The uke, right? Uke means receiver, okay? It means the one who is receiving the technique. The tori is the one who is delivering the technique. So the tori, when you're working with a training partner and you are practicing a technique, the tori is practicing the omote. They're practicing the obvious that everybody looks at. Where do I step? How do I use my hand? Where do I strike? How do I move into the throw? Whatever. The uke is learning the ura, the back or the inside of the technique. They're receiving the technique. Most people take that to mean, well, I let him do it to me so I can practice my break falls. Yeah. Okay. At the very basic level. But the uke is feeling what's happening inside the body of the attacker when this particular thing is delivered. You don't need, I always tell my students, get an anatomy book or whatever so you can learn how this stuff works. You don't have to. You can just be a better uke and feel what's happening when it's right, and that thing's not happening when it's wrong. Okay? So the tori is practicing based on what you can see. But when that same student trades places with their partner and they're playing the role of the uke, they're learning the invisible. They're learning the feel. They're feeling the back lock up, the shoulder blade jam into the rib cage. They're feeling how the joint locks up, that kind of thing. They're learning that side. So now when they go back to being the tori and it's their turn again to do that side, they keep that in mind. Okay, where was the arm when he locked me up? I need to make sure I carry the arm to that position, right? Those kind of things, right? So again, there's the, because if you're just paying attention to what you can see, right? Well, I'm doing this to the arm. No, you're putting what you can see in a certain position. But what does the correct position do to the joint? Okay. There was actually something a bunch of years ago, and I don't know how the hell it got started, right? But soft training somehow got equated with the idea that the technique shouldn't hurt. Okay. Well, Hatsumi Sensei said you shouldn't hurt your partner. Yeah. What he was saying was, that was kind of like I suggest you train with. What he was saying was, you don't have to try to hurt your partner. A properly executed technique will hurt all by itself, which is why we want you to train softly, mindfully, safely. Okay? If you have to apply force, or you apply force and it's only slightly tweaking your partner, you didn't like dislocate that shoulder, well, apparently it wasn't right. Okay? But somehow this stuff came around where a technique shouldn't hurt. If your partner feels pain, you're not doing it right. That's not correct soft training. No, that's an improperly applied technique. Because I can go as slow, you can go as slow as you need to go to not damage your partner. Let's define the word hurt. Are we talking about hurt owie or hurt damage? Don't damage your partner, but a properly executed technique, even very slowly, will hurt. Okay. Let's see. Jay, do you recommend resistance training, cardio, stretching to supplement our training? You can. What was taught to me in Japan and whatnot was, I mean, you can do those things, but you have to be careful because a lot of that stuff will counteract the Junin Taiso. It will counteract the stretching and flexibility. Okay, so what I was taught was just to do the taijutsu more, or the things that you do that which will isolate the muscles. So a punching exercise, I'm going to have to back away from my camera here. For again, those of you who are on audio, I'll try to describe it as much as possible. Let me grab this water bottle that I have, right? So we're going to take a dumbbell. You shouldn't be straining to pick this thing up, okay? Because you're going to isolate just the triceps, okay? And so for strengthening the muscles that extend the arm, okay, what makes the arm extend? Well, there's a little bit of deltoid, there's a little bit of muscle back here, right? But the tricep, right, when it contracts, that happens, okay? When the bicep contracts, we have to relax the tricep, but when the biceps contract, that happens, okay? So I'm going to work this so that the driving power of my strike is better, right? So what we can do is lift the arm all the way up to lock out the shoulder and then just drop the forearm, okay? So the elbow is up. And then what I'm going to do, put this weight in here and then just punch up. If I just punch up, not flex from the elbow, I'm not curling. I'm punching straight up. For those of you who can see it on video, you can see that my elbow slips into an alignment between my shoulder and my hand or my wrist, right? I'm punching straight up, okay? That isolates and it isolates the punching muscles for extending with this ski. So that, okay, but don't overdo it because everything will tighten up. And so you need to find a happy medium between doing that kind of thing. Cardio, what I was taught as far as cardio and everything was walking is your best thing. Okay. Can you do other things? Of course, right? But here's I think what most people miss. Okay. And I know where a lot of this stuff is coming from, where you're fat, you're losing the battle with diabetes. They have no idea how much or how little I eat or whatever they're going. And I get it, right? Forgive a lot. Okay. Most people think about training or the exercise stuff from the perspective of having to last multiple 2 to 5 minute rounds. If I were training to go out in the battlefield and have to keep going, of course, I wouldn't have the family and I wouldn't have the life that I have and whatever, right? So, yeah, I'd probably be a different shape, but I'd also be, I'm 61, so I'd be at least 25, 35 years younger. Okay. So, but if you're training for self-defense, the average self-defense situation is over in 2 to 10 seconds. It may push to 20 or 30 seconds if you're dealing with multiple attackers. But the rule of thumb is 4 moves or less, 10 seconds or less, because you're working with the glycogen already in your muscles. So you have this burst. Okay. And if you don't have it, well, that's why we break things off or we cause them to stumble, and you learn how to shake things out. You learn how to change your breathing. There's cleansing breaths and things like that. Now, are all these things good ideas? Absolutely. They're all good ideas for general health and whatnot. Stretching, absolutely, right? Stretching is actually more important. Now, for Westerners in the East, now, well, I take this back because they have to do it more and more. The more they have adopted, coming out of Takamatsu Sensei's era, things had to change, right? So they do more stretching like we do. But historically, classically, if you look at the Juden Taiso and stuff, most of the stretches, there's a little bit going on with the back and whatnot, but it's incidental based on what you're doing with your hips. But most of the Juden Taiso focus on the legs. Okay. And it was because of the getting up and down and flexibility and stuff like that, right? But we have to factor in back and those kind of things. So I'm a much bigger stretcher. My life is extremely busy. Could I work in extra time? Yeah, I'm going to try to do some additional walking as in time. But my task at the moment is to figure out what I can multitask with while I'm walking, because there's a trade-off. The time in the gym is time not getting things done that have to be done in the background, because right now, what you guys see, we've got a couple of black belts helping with classes at the dojo, but online, it's James and I. And there's a shit ton to be done. And the more students we get, and I'm not in a position at the moment to hire staff. And my experience is don't get volunteers, because their life will always supersede what you get in return. And so I've come to believe, something that a mentor told me a long time ago, that free help is the most expensive help you could never not afford. Okay? So I lucked out with James. Sorry. No, I mean, it's good, but either way. So James, yeah, I mean, I recommend things in moderation, right? What I recommend is exercises that will, if you're looking at resistance training, exercises that will make muscles that are weak and not allowing you to do techniques correctly, right? You can't hold yourself in a lower kami. You can't go farther range of motion wise, even if the flexibility is there, because your stabilizer muscles are weak or whatever. I recommend flexibility if your range of motion doesn't allow you to go deeper into a kami to push your fist farther through their body. Because we have to remember that a person falls away from me. My attacker will fall away from me. It falls off my fist at the point where my fist stops in space. And the longer his legs are relative to mine, the deeper I have to go, or I'm not knocking him off his feet. Right? Or you just have to get really, really accurate with breaking things that will cause him to just disconnect and drop. Hopefully that made some really cool noise. Dave Fletcher says the best exercises are doing the activities you want the development for. Absolutely. Right. Every time we've ever asked the master teachers in Japan, right, what exercises to make my legs stronger to do ichimonji, right? You know what they say? There are none. There are no exercises at a gym or no static exercises that will work the muscle groups in their entirety to do the thing you want done. And what you risk doing is doing the things that those machines or weights or exercises or whatever do, but they're always going to miss things. So you're going to be out of balance. So to make muscle groups stronger, you do the thing more. But be careful overdoing it, because you have to strike a balance between the muscles being strong enough to carry the body, but the joints being supple enough to allow for range of motion. Physical muscular exercise, resistance training, causes stiffer joints. Too much stretching weakens the muscle fibers because they get too elongated, and now the contraction won't create the strength that you need. So it's about balance. I don't know if that helped or not. I hope so. What else you got, James? Now that I can hear you.
That looks like it's it.
Cool beans. All right. So hopefully that helped, right? But asking how do I know what techniques to do in given situations is still only focusing on the technique, and it's not focusing on scenario-based training, which is why for my black belts, not only do we work on more variation and things like that, but the variations are always based on what the hell's going on. Okay, so anyway, we did close down the recordings, James. The recordings for camp. What's your estimation as to how long? It normally takes you like a week to get those things turned around and out for everybody. Is that right?
Yes, about that.
About that. So let's do this. If anybody's still interested in getting that stuff other than the student's journey freebie kind of thing, let me know. If there's enough people that want it, I'll open the page, because right now we disconnected it. Right when I said you couldn't pre-order after 5 o'clock yesterday, I wasn't kidding. As soon as camp was over, I went in and hit a switch. Now, when you try to go to that same link to pre-order the videos, what you see is a page that says there's a glitch in the matrix. Okay, that's a Japanese thing for it. You're not getting them. But if anybody wants them, let's say, what's today, Monday night through Wednesday, right? I'll open it up so people can jump on them. If not, no harm, no foul, right? Because again, one of the beliefs that people have is if I can't go to the seminar, that's better than video training. Yeah, you know what video training is better than? Not getting the lessons at all. I had one guy, my guy Lee, he's in Georgia. He was on live for the entirety of camp, the entire weekend. As a matter of fact, when we took the picture of the group on Sunday, he was on the TV screen and then we just made sure that there was a hole. And when people first look at the picture, they ignore the TV. I had to point out that the guy on the screen was a part of camp. He did it virtually the entire time. Had a couple of really good insights too. So anyway, I think that's it. So I don't know what my topic is for Whiteboard Wednesday. So I guess you'll know after 2:00 tomorrow, because I don't even know what it is at the moment. What are we doing next week? Next. I don't have my notes in front of me. So, but what I am going to do for a while here is we're going to be sticking in this realm. We did some mental, emotional, personal development prerequisites to make sure you're not screwing yourself over, kind of thing, with your training. We've done that for several classes, 6, 7, something like that. And so next couple of episodes, we're going to be focusing on some physical aspects or the physical aspects of fight scenarios. I'm not going to be teaching techniques. I mean, I've obviously mentioned techniques during this one, but considerations for training that I think students should be paying attention to. And I only think that because Hatsumi Sensei made me do it. So there you go. Okay. So, but he only made me do it because Takuma Sensei made him do it. Huh. Must be something to this lineage thing. Anyway, some people want to get out of things. Like, they can still train. You can still get belts for whatever, but they can still get the same level of ability without doing the same level of, or the same types of training. That's like people believe that they can go to the thrift store or to Walmart, whatever it is in your country, Walmart, and buy quality things for 1/10 of the price. You're going to be replacing it more often. That's the difference. And I get not being able to afford it. I get it. Okay. But the trick and the commitment needs to be to buy the best quality you can afford for what you can afford. Not good enough. Good enough based on what I can afford. But as a warrior, I'm always working to be able to increase the level of my life experience as well. I swear to God, if I hear one more, that's a tired old story. Okay. What I should have said that episode when that came across was, yeah, it's a tired old story because it's still true. Nothing gets old because it doesn't last the test of time. Okay? As warriors, we need to know this. I tell my new people when they come in the door, and I give them a tour around the dojo, and I explain to them I'm teaching to bow toward the kamiza. We're not bowing down to anything. What I want you to understand is we are showing respect to hundreds of years, hundreds of people, thousands of people who have lived and died purifying this stuff so that we could do it. Another way to say that is this stuff developed during periods in history where when you left the house in the morning, there was no guarantee that you were coming home. So what that means is the stuff that we are teaching has worked again and again and again and again and again. Why would I not try to learn that stuff? Why would I learn that in the dojo and then go do whatever the hell I want out on the street? That makes no sense unless all I wanted was a belt. But it's worked again and again and again. What about the stuff that didn't work? We don't know about it because it died with the person who tried to do it. It's not the same as do-overs. In sport martial arts, you can try shit, lose the fight, and try it again next fight. That's a problem with today's world from a warrior perspective. In the old days, people who did dumb shit or were weak or whatever didn't make it. Bad decision making, whatever. Then we hit a period or periods in history where we protected them from themselves and they grew up to be adults. And now they're making the rules and calling the shots. Huh. And it shows. I know how unfashionable that is, and I know how that's not PC. It doesn't make it not true. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay. So, do we have a T-shirt on? For those of you who are trying to from camp, you were trying to get onto WCIDragonsDen.com for to order the spring camp T-shirt. There's a glitch in the matrix, except it's not our fault. We have two hosts. We moved the pro shop to another server, to another host, and the original one released our domain name, but the new one is taking their fucking time to get it turned on that side. So what we have is what was originally there. So if you're trying to get to WCIDragonsDen.com, and even after this will still work. You can use either one of these to get there, but that's not. It's going to tell you that the site doesn't exist or whatever, right? You have to go to warriorconceptsinternational.com. I'm sorry, you have to spell the whole thing out. warriorconceptsinternational.com. No hyphens this way, right? And that's going to drop you on the Dragon's Den thing. If you scroll down just a little bit, and I mean just a little bit, the left hand T-shirt pick is for camp, but we're not going to leave that up for very long because I don't want that to be all convoluted with stuff, because nobody orders camp T-shirts and stuff, weeks, let alone months after the thing is over. So that'll get retired, set aside, and then we can free up space for other things. So if you want it, it's still available. Otherwise, I apologize. People were trying to get in during the weekend, and I couldn't figure out what the hell the problem was. And here, the URL hasn't been reactivated on the new host site, and we can't do anything about it. We're playing a waiting game now. So if you want it, warriorconceptsinternational.com. If you don't, no harm, no foul. If you don't want the T-shirt, get a coffee mug, whatever. Okay? So they make great weapons too. Okay. Oh, that's where it was coming from. Don't we have something over on the thing? I know we have it for Ninja and we have it for Black Belt, but do we have it with the Warrior instead, where it says everybody wants to be a warrior until it's time to do warrior shit? Do you know if we have the Warrior variation? I know we have shirts that say everybody wants to be a Black Belt until it's time to do Black Belt shit, and everybody wants to be a ninja until it's time to do ninja shit. But I don't know if we have one that says everybody wants to be a warrior until it's either way, because people get jacked about certain words. So anyway, I don't know, but if we don't, that's one to pop into Eric's ear. I want that variation. So anyway, that's it. Anything else? Nothing else? James, you're welcome. No problem. All right, guys. Again, thank you very much. You have no idea. I really appreciate you. You have no idea. Without you, I'd be talking to dead air, but I wouldn't keep doing this. I mean, obviously, we're doing something right. Yeah, we'll just keep on moving. All right. So hopefully I'll see you again on Whiteboard Wednesday, or I don't know, on one of the programs. For those of you who, I need to make this announcement. I don't know if I made it last KUDEN. I know I made it last Whiteboard Wednesday. Since COVID, we have continued to add more and more lessons, more and more ways to get lessons. Tuesday and Friday Zoom lessons from the school, all that kind of stuff. But services and all that kind of stuff has gone up. We're at a point now where, like, I haven't changed the tuition on things in such a long time. So those of you who have inner circle memberships, those of you who are in the Ninpo Mastermind, those kind of things, make sure your membership stays current, because June 1st, tuition's going up at least 50%. Okay, we're doing too much, and the price, our costs are way up, and right now the tuition that we have in place is devaluing how much we're actually giving. So now, I don't mind over delivering. I really, really don't. But we're in a position now where it's so. If you're not already in, consider it. If you've been on the fence, jump. But if you've got a membership, maintain it. That includes Ninpo Mastermind. Right now, it's $47 a month. That's going to at least $67. but everything's going up at least 50%. Okay, so hopefully we don't lose anybody. I mean, everybody's grandfathered in as long as they get in before June 1st. After June 1st, prices are going up. So I can't keep doing what we're doing at the level we're doing, and still provide the same level of service and stuff that we're doing. So, and I don't want to take things away, but I can't hurt myself. That would be like not training properly and believing that you can still survive when the shit's hitting the fan. Okay. So anyway, I needed to get that out. I apologize for the shameless plug, but the reality is even these free things to you guys, there's, what is it, James? 3 services that are involved in putting this out, right? So that are not free to me. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I will talk to everybody again next time. Where are we? Sorry. No, I needed that to change my screen. All right. So I'll see you next time on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.